Coach Corey Wayne, and this is my video coaching newsletter. And the topic of today's video newsletter is going to be what's really the reason, what's the real cause behind the Arab Spring? In other words, why are all these Muslim countries rising up and overthrowing their dictators or protesting? I mean, if you look at what's going on in Syria, I mean, people are getting slaughtered. The same thing that's what's happened in Iran last year and the year before with the movement of all of the protesters. And unfortunately, these Arab regimes crack down really hard on their people and are just slaughtering their people on the streets. So to answer the question, the guy who sent me, the Twitter follower who sent me the question about what's going on in the Middle East, in other words, he wanted to know what I see is happening or what I think is going to happen in the Middle East. And Thomas Jefferson had a quote which is also on my website. It's called, "Enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day." That's what I think is going on over there. What are the causes? What are the triggers? Well, basically what you have is you have the banks on Wall Street. You look at like Goldman Sachs or these Merrill Lynch or these trading houses that basically went bankrupt, that their buddies in Congress, the president, his advisors, all of them got together and they all bailed out their friends and obviously made the taxpayers responsible because they were too big to fail. So basically what's going on now is bankers are looking for yield. And obviously there's not enough people, not enough companies that are good risk for loans, and so the banks aren't lending. And as I talked about in my post, What is Money Really? What's happening is the actual amount of dollars that the American people have access to has been decreasing. But yet, like Goldman Sachs, now that they're an investment bank, now they've got, they're no longer a Wall Street firm. Now they're a bank as well, and so they basically have access to borrow money from the Fed at next to nothing in interest. And so obviously there's not enough yield here in the States, so what are they doing with their money? Wall Street is taking this money and they're speculating overseas. They're speculating in cotton, they're speculating in oil, gold, silver, all kinds of other commodities. And if you've been following commodities over the past 6 months or a year, I mean, you look at things like cotton or food for that matter. What these traders do is they look for events in the media, events in the news. Like if you've ever known anybody that trades options, what they do is they try to get out ahead of something that's happening. Obviously, inside information is illegal, except if you're part of the good old boy network. There's a lot of that going on in Wall Street. But basically, what happens is these guys, since there's really no safe loans or over here in the States, is that they're taking this money that they're getting from the Fed at next to nothing, and they need to make some money. They got to return. They need to get returns for their stockholders. So they're taking this money and they're bidding up. Like Russia had really bad droughts last year, and they actually stopped exporting grain because their crops had been decimated. So they take advantage of things like that, and then they start going long in the commodities. And these are huge, hundreds of millions and billions of dollars of money getting poured into these markets. And so what does it do? It causes the cost of cotton to go up. They're jacking the price of food up. And when you look at some of these Arab countries where families spend 70 to 75% of their income just on food alone, and the rest for everything else. And now what's happening is because these jerk-offs on Wall Street are now bidding up the commodities because they got all this fucking free money from the Fed. They're not investing it in the American economy, which would put people back to work. They're going over and bidding up the costs of commodities. And so what's happening is these Arab countries, these people now, they work their asses off and they can't even earn enough money to buy food. So you have a bunch of young people, a lot of them are educated, went to college, and there's no jobs because their regimes have been corrupt for a long time. And so there's actually a lot of things going on all at once. And obviously the big part of it is what Wall Street has done. And so they've just basically kicked the dominoes over, in essence. And so these people, it's like Gerald Celente from the Trends Research Institute has got a great quote. And he says, when people have lost their homes, they've lost their jobs, and they've got nothing left to lose. They can't support their families anymore. They lose it. And that's what these people are doing. I mean, things were already bad enough. And now with the cost of food and clothing and everything else skyrocketing through the roof, not because there's a low supply of it, but because these jerk-offs like Goldman Sachs is just, hey, it's nothing personal. It's just fucking business to these guys. They're just out to make yield for their shareholders. And if, hey, people get killed in the meantime, they don't look at things like this. And honestly, they don't really fucking give a shit. It's not their problem. That's the way they look at it. And what they're doing is totally legal. It's totally allowed by what they're doing. But, nobody in the media, nobody in D.C. wants to look at the elephant in the room and see that basically Wall Street is what caused the dominoes to start falling because of what they're doing. And so, but what is really facilitating this is Twitter, Facebook, because what happens, just like the Thomas Jefferson quote I just shared with you, enlighten the people generally, and tyranny and oppressions of body and mind will vanish like evil spirits at the dawn of day. What's happening is these guys in the Middle East, even though they may be broke, they're all walking around with fucking smartphones and iPhones, and they're on the internet. And so they're able to read, they're able to start finding out what's going on, and they're able they're creating little Facebook groups or creating a Twitter followers, and they're having protests, and they're just instantly able to have thousands of people really show up in an area. And so it's absolutely amazing. So what do I think's happening? It's the people are seeing their regimes that are in control of everything for what they are, and they don't have anything to lose. It's like, what do they care? There was a moment during the Egyptian uprising a few days before Mubarak stepped down, and it brought tears to my eyes. I was watching Al Jazeera, and there was an Egyptian man, and he was in one of the main squares, and the police were basically firing on people, and people were falling next to him left and right and dying. And I think this guy was around in his 50s, and there was an older man that was next to him, and this guy right in between him got blown away, and he fell, and and he's just, and this guy who's on the phone with Al Jazeera was telling this story. And he was very emotional about it because it was very traumatic. These are friends of his. These are people that he had known, and they're getting killed right and left and right next to him. And he's just saying, and they don't have any weapons or anything. They're not fighting. They're just getting basically slaughtered by this, corrupt police and this security apparatus that Mubarak used to keep and stay in power. And this old man said to him, he says, because the guy, that was on the phone says, "Oh my God, this is terrible. We're getting slaughtered here." And this old man says to him, he says, "No." He says, "It's an honor. It's an honor to give your life for the revolution." And I guess in that moment, something that struck this caller was that he said, if we're not afraid to die, I don't think we can be defeated. It was really powerful when I heard those words. I mean, it brought tears to my eyes. I mean, here I am sitting in the United States, pretty safe, secure area, nice place, nice neighborhood, got plenty of food in the fridge, and I'm listening to this guy on the other side of the world who's watching civilians just get fucking absolutely slaughtered by this corrupt security apparatus, and he was losing his fear. And that's what you're seeing is these Arab protesters, like they don't have anything left to lose. It's like they don't care. And you see, you got people in the media going, "Oh, it's Al Qaeda's going to take over." You got all these Islamists and all of these people from Al Qaeda, and I mean, yeah, there's definitely a radical element in all of these societies, but that's not the majority of the people. And so he's like, well, these guys are going to take over, and these people are getting slaughtered by people that are way stronger and have way better weapons than any of these militant Islamic groups have, and they're not afraid of the government, so they're certainly not gonna, once they get their freedom, they're certainly not gonna allow a small group of people who were brutal and what General Petraeus had described as being diabolic. It's like they're not gonna allow this shit. They're not gonna let these guys take over. I mean, as much as they've sacrificed and they've fought for and to get their freedom, they're not gonna let it happen. So what do I see in the Middle East is that these old regimes are dying. A friend of mine, one of my teachers said to me years ago, he said, everything that no longer serves humanity is dissolving. And that's what I believe that we're seeing. Just like Thomas Jefferson said, it's that people are finding out. It's not just in the Arab countries. We're also seeing it in the States. I mean, when you see the rise of groups like the Tea Party and other groups on the left they're just fucking fed up with this corrupt political system, and having politicians that look in the teleprompter at night and just read a bunch of words that are written from some staffer who's scanning the headlines and opinion polls going, ooh, this is important, people, let's throw a little sentence in there. So, the poor bastard that comes home after, working 2 jobs, and he catches maybe 10 minutes of the evening news and he sees the president or somebody in Congress that he voted for uttering some platitude about something he's going to do or planning on doing, and he thinks, oh, hey, that's my guy, I voted for that person. Yeah, they're taking care of business. They don't have the time to really sit there and research and figure out that, these politicians are basically doing whatever the fuck they want. I mean, they say what they need to say to get elected, and once they get in there, it's the same old shit. It's the same thing. It's just them paying off the bankers or the Wall Street special interests or their buddies in the defense sector or some other corporation. I mean, it's interesting what Mussolini, who was the fascist dictator of Italy, said during World War II. He said, and he should know what fascism is. He was Hitler's strongest ally, and he said, fascism is the perfect merger of state and corporate interests. Think about that for a second. And that's basically what you see, is that the corporations that have grown up around D.C., and not just here, it's all over the world. It's the same kinds of people. The well-connected, it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or Republican or whoever. They're all corrupt. They point the finger and say, those guys got the special. It's like everybody's got their own fucking special interests. And it's just that you elect one guy from one party, and then you put somebody else in there, and it's like they each got their own special interests, and it's just fucking business as usual. And so the good news is that people are becoming aware. It's like I talk to so many older people that are retired, and they know what's going on. They're on the internet. They're reading this stuff. They're reading the stories. And so people are learning what's going on. And so you're seeing this anger, this seething anger, because around the world globally, people are realizing that these politicians are just basically, they're professional liars. They look at public opinion polls, and they say what they think they need to say to get elected. They don't have any problem lying. And like Dostoevsky said, he said, a man who lies to himself and believes his own lies is unable to recognize truth either in himself or in anyone else. And so our government is full of people like this. One of our founding fathers, I think it was Samuel Adams, had said, he said, if ever a time should come when vain and aspiring men shall occupy the highest seats in government, our nation will stand in need of its experienced patriots to prevent its ruin.